Hello and welcome to a new vlog and video of the cruise vibes, and today we're gonna take a look at the first 2 days on board of the AIDAnova, the ship that I showed to you in my last very long video. Took us 55 minutes to see all public areas of this beautiful ship, and now we're going on board and we are leaving Hamburg and we're heading, and then we're having a day at sea. We're starting at the light vessel, the Feuerschiff, here in Hamburg, where I stayed overnight, which I showed to you already in the second to last video. Then I had a very nice and lovely prepared breakfast. As you can see here, it's not a buffet, it is served at your table. That was very nice, and as you can see as well, it was extremely foggy today in Hamburg, so I was expecting the fog to leave later on during the day, but actually it didn't, it stayed the whole day. And now it's time to leave the Feuerschiff, and I'm now heading to the bus stop at AIDAnova, which is right next to the Hochbahn station, to the underground station. And now I'm taking the bus of the line 111 to the Elbbrücken. This is not very important for you. For you it's just important to go to Elbbrücken. You can do that by underground, you can do that by bus, or you can do that by S-Bahn. So there are multiple ways to get there. It's just important to get there if your ship is leaving on a Saturday or Sunday, where the ferry that I showed to you in my Queen Anne video is not in operation. So you need to go to the terminal on a different way, and if you don't want to pay for a taxi or a transfer, you can take the bus line 256 from Elbbrücken to the beginning of the terminal grounds. That's working quite well, and here we can see the AIDAnova, or we can barely see her actually still because of the fog. Embarkation process was extremely efficient. I was wondering how AIDA will manage to get more than 6,000 passengers on board, but it was faster than on the Queen Anne. It took not even 1 hour to get on board, to get checked in, go through security and go to cabin was less than 1 hour, so that was very impressive. And here we can see my beautiful cabin. It's an outside cabin. We can now take a detailed look. Here you can see my desk with power sockets, of course. Here we have a mirror as well and some additional storage. And then we're going past my comfortable bed, and here we can also see a sofa, which also can be extended as a second bed. We have a power socket next to one of the beds, just on one side. On the other side there's no power socket. But nearby you have this nice seating area. That was my favorite part of the cabin. I just turned around the cushions and then I was always laying down there watching the waves go by, so that was quite nice. And of course there's also a wardrobe. The wardrobe is rather small compared to the size of the cabin, but it's more than enough for one person, and also for two persons it's enough, because usually the ship is only sailing for 1 week. You can combine the cruises, then you're staying on board 2 weeks, but that's also still enough space. And behind that blue door you can find the bathroom, which is also very nice and quite nicely equipped. Everything is there, a lot of storage space is there, quite big and comfortable shower, so it's a quite beautiful bathroom. Then it was time for the digital safety drill. You can do that on your phone or on the TV. Then you just have to put on your life jacket and head to the assembly point, where your cruise card will be scanned, and then you're already done. I then headed to Best Pizza at Sea, which was quite nice. I found the pizza on the smaller AIDA ship slightly better, but it was still good. And then it was time for the sail away. Here we are leaving the terminal. You can see the terminal building below, but just barely, because the fog was so strong that from deck 18 the view was already limited. And yeah, it was not that much of a spectacular sail away, because there was just simply nothing to see as the fog was so strong. As you can also see here at the lights next to the funnel, there was an extremely thick fog, so there was not that much to see of the port of Hamburg. As you know, Sailing out of Hamburg usually is pretty spectacular, but here on this day there was not that much to see. But there was après-ski music on deck 18 around ski gondolas, which was very nice because I was just coming back from my skiing holiday. And here we can see a slight bit of the port of Hamburg, but due to the fog there was not that much to see. Also there were not that many people up on the sun deck. After a couple of minutes, as everybody realized, we will not see anything from the city of Hamburg. This is the most we got to see from Hamburg. Here you can see the cruise terminal of Altona and the harbor ferry. If you have sailed out of Hamburg, you know how much you usually see at this point, but today that was all we got. So most guests went back inside pretty fastly, and also I left the sun deck after a couple of minutes. A few people stayed to party in one of the gondolas and around them having a few drinks, but I decided to go back inside and I headed to the art bar for a first non-alcoholic cocktail. I always watched out of the window, tried to get a glimpse of anything, but as you can see that was all I got, so there was not that much to see. So then I headed to the French Kiss restaurant where I had a reservation for dinner. It's a very nice and lovely restaurant, but unfortunately it is located at a very important corridor, so there's always people walking past your table. So that can be a bit disturbing, but take a look at the food, how nice the food looks. And this restaurant is included in your cruise fare. You just need to have the reservation, but it is included, so you don't have to pay extra for this food. On other ships this would be a specialty restaurant where you need to pay for, but here it's included, so I was very surprised in a positive way by the food quality on board of AIDAnova. We then got to a stop at Cuxhaven, and I later found out that there was a medical emergency on board. One guest needed to be taken to a hospital, so the sea rescue service had to come and pick him up. That was a bit difficult because of the promenade I was also talking about in my last video. As the promenade is wider than the ship, it was difficult for the ship of the sea rescue service to come alongside, but in the end it worked of course out and the guest was taken into hospital. Usually this is done by helicopter, but that was not possible due to the fog. And the next morning started quite relaxed with a nice breakfast and me watching the waves from my comfortable seating area around the window, and then I had a reservation for lunch in the Ocean's Fish restaurant where you can get a nice salad from the buffet. Then I had a tasty soup and a very nice main course, so also here the food quality was very good. Also this restaurant is included, you just need to have a reservation. It was a very relaxed day, I didn't do that much, I just enjoyed being on the ship, and then it was already time for the sunset and I went up to deck 18 to watch the sun go down. And there was one thing that I was wondering about on the first day. There was very high hygienic standards on board of the AIDAnova, much higher than on other cruise ships. And first I thought that there might be some problem on board, and it kinda reminded me of the COVID times. But later on I heard in the media that in the beginning of 2025 there was high numbers of the norovirus all around Europe, so they just had higher hygienic standards here on board, and it was not because there was the norovirus on board, but they want to prevent that from happening. So for example, they were making sure that everybody who entered the restaurant was disinfecting their hands and washing their hands. There was a crew member at each entrance of the restaurant. If you were assigned to a table, they made sure that only one person is getting to the table. Afterwards the table is getting cleaned, and only after that they gave it to the next guests. So that was a bit strange on the first day, because this is usually not happening on a cruise ship, but it actually was quite nice because this should be like that always for hygienic reasons. It's just a bit difficult, you just need extra crew for this, so it's not happening usually. But here it was working quite well, and from the second day on it felt quite normal, and it was also quite nice that the guests were doing it on their own, so it was not necessary to remind every single person to wash their hands, to disinfect their hands. On the first day it felt a bit strange and I was a bit worried, but from day 2 on I actually liked the higher hygienic standards and it was working quite well. So this was a very nice sunset that I enjoyed here on the day at sea, and then it was time for dinner. Today I had a very special restaurant booked because there is a vegan restaurant on board. As you know, I'm not a vegan, but still, why not trying it out? Why not giving this restaurant a chance? And I wanted to see all the restaurants on board. At least try it. Even 1 week is not enough for this. So first positive point is there is a good choice of drinks. There are also a lot of non-alcoholic drinks available based on the non-alcoholic martini. So if you don't want to drink alcohol, your choices are not limited to water, soft drinks and juices. But you can also have some nice cocktail and long drink like drinks. And as you can see, the food was looking amazing, and I can tell you it also tasted amazing. I was not missing anything. Sometimes if you eat vegan or vegetarian food, you feel like with a bit of meat or fish it would be better, but here it was a perfect menu and I really enjoyed it. And that's it for the first 2 days on board. I hope you enjoyed this video. Here you can see when the next video will be uploaded and the name of the song. As always, I'd like to say thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to comment, like, subscribe or share the video link, and I hope to see you in my next video then.